It was a cold February night in 1979, and the streets of Detroit were darker and more dangerous than they had ever been. The city was hemorrhaging jobs, hope, and humanity as the automotive industry collapsed around it. In neighborhoods where factories once provided steady work and pride, desperation had taken root, breeding the kind of violence that preyed on the most vulnerable. 73-year-old Samuel Washington was walking home from his late shift at the diner where he washed dishes for $3.35 an hour, just enough to keep his small apartment and buy groceries. He had no idea that 3 young men had been following him for the past 4 blocks, waiting for the right moment to strike. He had no idea that in the next 5 minutes, he would be saved by 5 words from the most famous man in America. This is the incredible true story of the night Muhammad Ali proved that real courage isn't about throwing punches, but about stepping up when someone needs help, and how 5 simple words can carry more power than the strongest fist. If stories about everyday heroism and the courage to do what's right move you, subscribe for more incredible moments that prove greatness often happens when no cameras are rolling. Detroit in February 1979 was a city in crisis. The automotive industry that had built the Motor City was crumbling, taking hundreds of thousands of jobs with it. Neighborhoods that had once bustled with workers heading to and from the plants now sat half empty, their streets growing more dangerous as desperation replaced hope. Muhammad Ali knew Detroit well. He had fought there many times, had seen the city in its heyday when the factories were humming and the future looked bright. But on this particular night, Ali wasn't in Detroit for a fight. He was there for something more personal, visiting his cousin Robert, who lived on the city's east side and was struggling with his own battles against unemployment and depression. Ali had spent the evening at Robert's small house, talking about family, about faith, and about how to find hope when everything around you seems to be falling apart. It was past 11 p.m. when Ali finally decided to head back to his hotel downtown. He could have called for his driver, could have had security escort him, but Ali had always preferred to walk when he could. It helped him think, helped him stay connected to the real world that existed beyond the spotlight and the fame. Samuel Washington had no idea who Muhammad Ali was as he made his own way through those same streets. Samuel had more pressing concerns than boxing or celebrity. At 73, he was working 2 jobs just to survive, washing dishes at night and cleaning office buildings in the early morning. His arthritis made every step painful. But he walked everywhere because he couldn't afford a car, and the bus service in his neighborhood had been cut years ago. Samuel was just 3 blocks from his apartment when they appeared out of the shadows. 3 young men, maybe 18 or 19 years old, stepped out from behind an abandoned storefront. They moved with the predatory confidence of people who had done this before, who knew how to spot an easy target and how to corner their prey. "Hey, old man," the tallest one called out, his voice carrying the false bravado that often masks fear and desperation. "You got something for us tonight." Samuel stopped walking, his heart immediately racing. In his 73 years, he had survived the Great Depression, World War I, and decades of racial discrimination. He had worked in factories when they wouldn't promote black men past the assembly line, had raised 4 children on wages that barely kept food on the table. But he had never been robbed, never been the victim of random street violence. "I don't have any money," Samuel said quietly, which was mostly true. He had $12 in his wallet, his tip money from the diner, which he was planning to use for groceries tomorrow. "Let's see about that," the second thug said, stepping closer. He was shorter but stockier, with the kind of build that came from lifting weights in someone's garage rather than any organized gym. "Empty your pockets, old man, and maybe we won't have to hurt you." Samuel's hands were shaking as he reached for his wallet. Not from fear, though he was certainly afraid, but from the arthritis that made his fingers stiff and uncooperative. The simple act of getting his wallet out of his back pocket took longer than it should have, and his slowness seemed to agitate his attackers. "Move faster," the third one shouted, and before Samuel could react, the young man shoved him hard in the chest. Samuel, already unsteady on his feet, went down hard on the concrete sidewalk. The impact sent shockwaves of pain through his fragile bones, and he felt something pop in his shoulder as he hit the ground. "Now look what you did, you stupid old fool," the tall one said, his voice turning cruel. "Now we got to teach you a lesson about moving faster when people are talking to you." That's when the beating began. It wasn't about money anymore. Samuel's $12 wouldn't have changed these young men's lives in any meaningful way. It was about power, about the temporary feeling of control that comes from hurting someone weaker than yourself. It was about channeling all their frustration and anger and hopelessness into violence against someone who couldn't fight back. They kicked him in the ribs, in the back, in the legs. Samuel curled up as much as he could, trying to protect his head and vital organs, but the pain was overwhelming. He could taste blood in his mouth, could feel his lips swelling, could hear his own labored breathing echoing off the empty storefronts. "Please," he gasped between kicks. "Please stop. Take whatever you want. Just please stop." But they weren't stopping. If anything, his pleading seemed to encourage them. They were lost in the violence now, feeding off each other's energy, escalating beyond any rational purpose. That's when Muhammad Ali turned the corner. Ali saw the scene from half a block away, 3 figures standing over someone on the ground, the unmistakable posture of people inflicting violence. In that instant, Ali had a choice to make. He could keep walking, avoid getting involved in something dangerous. He could call for help from a safe distance. He could mind his own business and let someone else deal with it. Instead, Muhammad Ali did what he had always done when faced with injustice. He stepped forward. Ali's footsteps were deliberately heavy as he approached, his size 12 shoes echoing off the concrete in a steady, unmistakable rhythm. He wanted them to hear him coming, wanted them to know that their private moment of violence was about to become very public. "What's going on here?" Ali called out when he was still 20 feet away, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard and obeyed. The 3 attackers looked up, startled. In the dim streetlight, they could see a large man approaching. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confident gait of someone who had never backed down from anything. But they couldn't yet make out his face, couldn't yet realize who they were dealing with. "Mind your own business, man," the stocky one said, trying to sound tough but already taking a step back from Samuel's prone form. "This don't concern you. When 3 men are beating an old man on the street, it concerns me," Ali replied, continuing to walk toward them. His voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of steel that made it clear he wasn't going to be intimidated or deterred. As Ali got closer, stepping into the pool of light cast by a nearby street lamp, recognition began to dawn on the faces of the 3 attackers. The tall one's eyes went wide, the stocky one's mouth fell open, and the third, the one who had shoved Samuel to the ground, actually took several steps backward. They were looking at Muhammad Ali, the most famous athlete in the world, the man whose face had been on the cover of every magazine, whose name was known in every country on earth. The man who had defeated every challenger, who had stood up to the United States government, who had become larger than life, and he was standing 10 feet away from them, looking directly at what they had been doing. "Oh shit," the tall one whispered, and in those 2 words was the recognition of how completely their night had just changed. Samuel, still on the ground and dazed from the beating, looked up to see his rescuer. Through swollen eyes and the fog of pain, he could make out a tall figure silhouetted against the streetlight, but he couldn't identify who it was. All he knew was that someone had come to help him. And for the first time in several terrifying minutes, he felt a spark of hope. Ali looked down at Samuel, taking in the extent of the old man's injuries, the swollen lip, the torn jacket, the way he was holding his ribs. Then he looked back at the 3 young men who were now standing frozen, unsure whether to run, fight, or beg for forgiveness. What happened next would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. Muhammad Ali stepped closer to the 3 attackers, close enough that they could see his face clearly in the streetlight, close enough that there was no doubt about who they were dealing with. He looked each of them in the eye, one by one, letting the weight of his presence settle over them like a blanket. Then he spoke 5 words that would haunt those young men forever. "I know where you live." The effect was immediate and complete. These weren't just 5 random words. They were 5 words that carried the full weight of Muhammad Ali's reputation, his connections, his power, and his unwavering commitment to justice. They were 5 words that said, "I see you, I know who you are, and there will be consequences for what you've done here tonight." The tall one was the first to break. "Mr. Ali, we weren't. We didn't mean." "You didn't mean what?" Ali interrupted, his voice quiet but carrying across the empty street like thunder. You didn't mean to beat an old man. You didn't mean to kick him while he was down. You didn't mean to rob him of his hard-earned money." The stocky one tried a different approach. "Look, Mr. Ali, we're sorry, okay? We'll just go now." "You'll go?" Ali agreed. "But not before you help this man to his feet, apologize for what you've done, and return whatever you took from him." The three attackers looked at each other, trapped between their fear of Ali and their reluctance to admit what they had done. But there was no real choice to be made. Muhammad Ali wasn't making a request. He was issuing a command, and everyone on that street corner knew it. The tall one stepped forward first, extending his hand to help Samuel up from the concrete. Samuel, still dazed and in pain, accepted the help hesitantly, unsure what was happening but grateful to get off the cold sidewalk. "I'm sorry, sir," the young man mumbled, his eyes fixed on the ground. "We're all sorry. We shouldn't have done that to you." Samuel nodded, still trying to process the surreal turn his evening had taken. One moment he had been certain he was going to be seriously injured or killed, and now his attackers were apologizing to him under the watchful eye of Muhammad Ali. The stocky one pulled Samuel's wallet out of his jacket pocket and handed it back, the $12 still inside. "Here's your money, sir. We didn't take nothing else." Ali watched this exchange with the stern expression of a judge presiding over a courtroom. When the wallet had been returned and the apologies offered, he turned his attention back to the three young men. "What are your names?" he asked. They exchanged nervous glances before the tall one answered. "I'm Marcus. This is Jerome and this is Dwayne." "Marcus, Jerome, and Dwayne," Ali repeated as if committing the names to memory. "And you live in this neighborhood?" "Yes, sir," Marcus replied. "Then you know that Mr. Washington here," Ali gestured toward Samuel, "as your neighbor. He's a man who works 2 jobs just to survive, who walks these streets every night because he can't afford a car, who's never hurt anyone in his life. And tonight, you 3 decided to make his hard life even harder." The weight of Ali's words settled over the group like a verdict. Marcus, Jerome, and Dwayne stood with their heads down, looking like the children they really were beneath their street, tough fuckheads. "Now I want you to think about something," Ali continued. "Each of you has a grandmother, right? Each of you has an old person in your family who loves you, who's proud of you, who worked hard their whole life to give you opportunities they never had." All 3 nodded. "How would you feel if 3 strangers beat up your grandmother for $12? How would you feel if someone kicked your grandfather while he was down on the ground, begging them to stop?" Marcus's eyes were filling with tears. Jerome was staring at his shoes. Dwayne was visibly shaking, whether from cold, fear, or shame. "That's exactly what you did tonight," Ali said. "You became the kind of people who prey on the elderly, who take advantage of the vulnerable, who make their own neighborhood a more dangerous place to live." Samuel, who had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement, finally found his voice. "Mr. Ali," he said tentatively. Ali turned to him with immediate attention and concern. "Yes, sir. Are you really Muhammad Ali?" Ali smiled for the first time that evening, and the transformation was remarkable. The stern judge disappeared, replaced by the warm, charismatic personality that had made him beloved around the world. "I am," Ali said, "and you are Mr. Washington, and you are a man who deserves to walk these streets safely." Samuel began to cry, not from pain, though his ribs still ached, but from the overwhelming relief and gratitude of being rescued by someone who could have easily walked by but chose instead to help. Ali put a gentle hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Are you hurt badly? Do you need to go to the hospital?" "I think I'm okay," Samuel said, though he was clearly still in pain. "Just bruised up. I've been through worse." Ali nodded, then turned back to Marcus, Jerome, and Dwayne, who had been standing frozen during this exchange. "Here's what's going to happen," Ali announced. "You 3 are going to walk Mr. Washington home. You're going to make sure he gets to his door safely, and then you're going to think real hard about the kind of men you want to be." "Yes, sir," Marcus said immediately. "And if I ever hear about any of you bothering elderly people, or robbing people, or hurting anybody in this neighborhood," Ali continued, "then we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir," all 3 said in unison. "Good. Now help Washington get home." What happened next was perhaps the most surreal part of an already incredible evening. The 3 young men who, 15 minutes earlier, had been beating Samuel Washington for his tip money, now formed a protective circle around him as they walked him the 3 remaining blocks to his apartment building. Muhammad Ali walked alongside them, making conversation with Samuel about his work, his family, his life in Detroit. Ali had the gift of making anyone feel like the most important person in the room, and despite the traumatic evening, Samuel found himself laughing at Ali's stories and sharing stories of his own. When they reached Samuel's building, a modest brick apartment complex that had seen better days, Ali insisted on walking him all the way to his door on the 2nd floor. "Mr. Washington," Ali said as Samuel fumbled with his keys. "I want you to have something." Ali reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card and several $20 bills. "This is my manager's card," Ali explained. "If anyone in this neighborhood ever bothers you again, you call that number and you ask for Herbert Muhammad. You tell him Muhammad Ali said to take care of you, and someone will be here to help you within the hour." Samuel's hands shook as he took the card and the money. "Mr. Ali, I can't take your money. You've already done so much." "You can and you will," Ali said firmly but kindly. "You're a man who works 2 jobs at 73 years old. You've earned the right to accept help when it's offered." Down on the street, Marcus, Jerome, and Dwayne waited nervously for Ali to return. They had been whispering among themselves, still processing what had happened, still coming to terms with how close they had come to seriously injuring an innocent man. When Ali came back down the stairs, the 3 young men straightened up like soldiers awaiting orders. "Now," Ali said, "I want each of you to give me your word that nothing like this will ever happen again." "I give you my word, Mr. Ali," Marcus said immediately. "Me too," Jerome added. "I promise," Dwayne said. "Good. And I want you to remember something. You think you're tough because you can beat up an old man who can't fight back. But real toughness is protecting people who can't protect themselves. Real strength is using your power to help, not to hurt." Ali paused, looking at each young man in turn. "You want to know what makes a man tough? Working 2 jobs at 73 like Mr. Washington. Raising children when you can barely feed yourself. Standing up for what's right even when everyone else tells you you're wrong. That's toughness." The 3 young men nodded, and for the first time all evening, they seemed to really understand what Ali was telling them. "Now go home," Ali said, "and tomorrow, you start figuring out how to become the kind of men your grandmothers think you already are." As the 3 walked away into the night, Marcus turned back one more time. "Mr. Ali," he called out, "thank you for not calling the police." Ali nodded. "I didn't need to call the police. I had something better." "What's that?" "I had you 3 realizing that you're better than what you did tonight." The story of that February night in Detroit spread quietly through the neighborhood over the following weeks. Samuel Washington told his coworkers at the diner, who told their friends, who told their families. The story grew and changed in the telling, as stories do, but the essential elements remained the same. Muhammad Ali had stopped a robbery, saved an old man, and done it with just 5 words. Marcus, Jerome, and Dwayne never forgot that night. Marcus ended up joining the military, serving 3 tours overseas before coming home to work with at-risk youth in Detroit. Jerome got his JED and became a mechanic, eventually opening his own shop. Dwayne struggled more, battling addiction and poverty for years, but he never again raised his hand against an innocent person. All 3 would later say that the 5 words Muhammad Ali spoke to them that night, "I know where you live," changed their lives forever. Not because they were afraid of Ali tracking them down, but because they realized that someone they respected saw them, knew them, and expected better of them. Samuel Washington lived for another 12 years, working at the diner until he was 85. He kept Ali's business card in his wallet until the day he died, and whenever anyone asked him about the time Muhammad Ali saved his life, Samuel would always say the same thing. "He didn't save my life with his fists. He saved it with his heart." The beauty of what Muhammad Ali did that night wasn't in the 5 words themselves, though they were perfectly chosen for maximum effect. The beauty was in everything that came after. The compassion he showed Samuel, the lesson he taught 3 young men, the way he transformed a moment of violence into a moment of learning and growth. Because that's what true greatness looks like. It's not about being the strongest or the fastest or the most famous. It's about using whatever power you have to protect those who need protection, to teach those who need teaching, and to show mercy to those who need a second chance. Muhammad Ali could have had those 3 young men arrested, He could have used his fame and connections to make their lives much more difficult. Instead, he chose to use his power to help them become better people. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes 5 words, spoken by the right person at the right moment, can change everything. Sometimes the greatest victories happen not in boxing rings or on battlefields, but on dark street corners where no cameras are rolling and no crowds are cheering, where one person simply decides to step forward and do what's right. The 3 thugs who were beating Samuel Washington that night learned something they would never forget, that true power isn't about who you can hurt, but about who you can help. And that sometimes the most devastating blow you can deliver is not a punch, but a reminder that someone believes you can be better than your worst moment. Muhammad Ali delivered that blow with just 5 words. I know where you live. But what those words really meant was, I see you, I believe in you, and I'm going to hold you accountable for becoming the person I know you can be. And in the end, that made all the difference.